So we are looking at your unit as well as comparables in your market. We are paying really close attention to the bottom line because we are investors before we are designers. And so I'm finding out what kind of furnishings and decor do you need to be competitive to get the dollar that you're wanting for your unit. From there, we're actually curating a design specific to your unit so that it's unique. You'll see all of our units that we furnish are all different, and then you can choose.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Sarah Weaver is a real estate investor. She's a coach, an author, and an entrepreneur. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine. Sarah, there are 3 questions I ask every guest who comes to the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Absolutely. I started investing in 2017. I now own 19 units in 4 states. I'm in the Omaha market, Des Moines, and Kansas City. And the interesting thing about me is I am buying real estate while traveling full time. So I didn't wait to have a big portfolio and then, retire to travel the world. I have been traveling and living my ideal lifestyle while I've been building my portfolio.
That's cool. Are those all single family rentals? Are those quadplexes? Are those one, I guess they couldn't be one unit because you're in 3 states. It'd be a spread out unit. What does that consist of?
It's one single family, and then the rest are duplexes and fourplexes.
That's cool. How many of those did it take before you were able to say, okay, cool, now I can go travel the world and do what I'm supposed to do, and then, keep investing in real estate?
I was traveling while I was buying. And so really what made it possible is I had a job where I could work remotely. And the first 3 units covered my lifestyle. I was able to live really cheaply in South America. And that's not the life that I preach for everyone. I don't think everyone should follow kind of what some call lean FI or lean financially independent. Right. I think you should make as much money or have as much money as you want. But for me, it was awesome. I only needed 3 units that cash flowed obviously really well. That covered my lifestyle. And now that I have 19 units and 9 of them are furnished rentals, I'm well beyond my financially freedom number and able to not work if I don't want to.
Now that's really cool. I love that. Yeah, I haven't heard of the lean FI, but certainly have thought about it, in travels around the world going, whoa, like I could live here and live really well for not that much money. So,
yeah.
While the dollar is still worth something, in 3 years we may be having a different conversation. That's still possible. But that's really, really cool. So Omaha, Nebraska, you buy these sight unseen. How do you find them? How do you locate them? I mean, you just relying on property management companies. What's your strategy?
Investor friendly agents. So agents who understand investing. And then I send them a very clear, some people call it buy box. I call it my crystal clear deal criteria, and put them to work. And then they get paid accordingly. When they find me deals, I buy them. And I really rely on them to be my eyes and ears on the ground.
Awesome. What's that like getting funding when you're living and working out of the country? How do banks look at that? Obviously, you figured out a way to get through that, but it seems like that would be a hurdle for some lenders to get their mind around.
Yeah, great question. I actually own my LLC is in the US, so I'm self-employed. I'm still working for a US company. It's now my company. And then before that, I was always working for US companies. And so that actually isn't a problem at all.
Okay, cool. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. So 9 furnished rentals. Now, is that a strategy that's different than Airbnb? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so what I like to do is I furnish units keeping in mind that I want my tenants or guests to stay 30 days or more. And so I call this the medium term rental or the midterm rental, MTR. So you have STR is Airbnb, VRBO, maybe your guests stay 2 to 3 days. I want my guests to stay 30 days or more. It's less turnover, less wear and tear on the unit, right, and just less admin time. I mean, my tenants on average are staying 91 days.
Okay. And what's the ideal tenant demographic? Is this insurance stays? Is this short-term contract work? Who is your ideal tenant then or guest, whichever way you want to call that, I guess, at a medium term rental.
Yeah, I never know which one to call them. So I use them
Yes.
pretty interchangeably.
Right.
Yeah. So the units that I have, they're all 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units near large hospital complexes. So a majority of my tenants are traveling nurses. Actually, right now, 100% of my guests are traveling nurses. So all 9 units are traveling nurses as of today. And I've had different guests in the past, but majority of them are traveling nurses.
What would you estimate is the rent premium you get on the medium term versus long term rental?
A 1 bedroom in Omaha, Nebraska would rent for anywhere between 675 to 850. I have one long-term unit in Omaha and it's renting for 830. So kind of top of the market. I think that's as much as I could get.
Sure.
Then that same exact unit type furnished gets me $1,875.
Right. Okay. So 2.25x if I'm just running back of the napkin math. Okay. That's
Exactly.
that's really, really exceptional, by the way. You know, be able to pull that off because that juices, obviously, as you're well aware, your returns in ways that you can't achieve. And especially when you're, I mean, 19 of those and that becomes a meaningful difference. Sarah, this is a question, that kind of comes to mind, furnishing all of those, getting them all outfitted, getting all the little stuff in, the knickknacks, the blender, the coffee maker, the vacuums. I mean, you don't live in the US. How do you pull that off?
Yes, I love this question because so many people ask me that I actually created a solution not only for me but for other investors. I now own a company, Aria Design Services, and we furnish Airbnbs, short-term rentals, medium-term rentals all across the US for investors. And so that's how we do it. I have a team that will do it not only for my units but also for anyone that's listening.
How do they do that? So say I called you and said, "Hey, I got a deal here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I want to do that." I mean, then they got to collaborate and find local boots in the ground that can then implement the plan. But how do they even, how do you guys go about determining what that plan is, what the design should be, what stuff should go in, how to lay out the house? I mean, those all seem like, and I'm not a designer. I mean, I can barely get dressed and make the colors match. So tell me how you guys do that.
Absolutely. So we are looking at your unit as well as comparables in your market. We are paying really close attention to the bottom line because we are investors before we are designers. And so I'm finding out what kind of furnishings and decor do you need to be competitive to get the dollar that you're wanting for your unit. From there, we're actually curating a design specific to your unit so that it's unique. You'll see all of our units that we furnish are all different. And then you can choose the higher tiered product is us flying out and installing it for you.
Hmm.
Or if you or your property manager or you want to handle having people, what I call installers, install it, you can do that and we'll have everything shipped to the unit for you.
Wow, that's really cool. I want to get on your website or on your platform and learn more about how you guys do that because that's certainly it's a turnkey solution, and it's especially really cool that you figured out how to do this from overseas. I mean, that's absolutely exceptional. Recently, you had something happen, and maybe if you don't want to talk about this, we can hit pause. But you're coming at us today with, I think, maybe an injury from an event you were hosting. I want to hear more about the events. But first, just tell the world how freaking cool it is that you do what you do, and then you got injured doing it.
Yes, so I host events all over the world. I take real estate investors on epic adventures, and this last one was a little less epic. I had I had a really gnarly fall on cobblestone. I wasn't even doing anything cool, Sam. I wish I was a good liar and I'd tell some great story about me, saving children. But no, I fell and it was a gnarly fall. I broke my elbow. I fractured 3 different arm bones, my radius, my ulna, and my humerus, and a ton of torn ligaments. And I still hosted my event. So that happened on a Tuesday. My guests came on Thursday. I did the event Thursday through Sunday. And on Monday, I flew back to the US to have surgery. And I'm now I got lots of metal and plates and pins and all sorts of things in my arm.
Oh my goodness. So tell me, I mean, that's that's a wild story. And thank you for coming on the podcast today. I know all too well what injuries like that entail. And the recovery period is brutal. So thanks for coming certainly on the show today. But epic events, talk about building even the following to where you had the courage to pull off an epic event like that. And I hate this is going to sound condescending, but it's not in the slightest. I think what you're doing is really cool. I would think this would be my own negative self-talk. I'd be like, man, I just own 19 units. I do some more medium-term rentals. Like nobody really cares that much to come learn from me, but obviously you're doing some really cool things. So don't hear me talking down on that at all. I think it's absolutely awesome. But how did you come up with the courage and then develop the following behind what you're doing in order to host these events around the world?
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that comment because I think it's so important for people to realize that sometimes learning from someone that's 2 steps ahead of you or even 8 steps ahead of you is better than learning from someone that's 50 steps ahead of you.
Right.
Because what I remember about the fear around that first, second, or third deal, or even maybe you own a portfolio of, let's say, 6 units, but they're all in your backyard and now the economy has shifted and you're like, shoot, I think I need to invest out of state, but
Right.
you're scared.
Right.
Or you want to try the BRRRR strategy for the first time. So there's all this fear that comes with investing that a lot of people don't talk about. Either because ego's in the way or we're nervous. We don't want to like show our hand that we're scared. And so I think what's really attracted people to my story is that I'm brutally honest about how this has all happened.
Mm.
I'm very transparent with my numbers, how little money I was making when I first started investing, and how quickly I scaled.
Right.
Because one thing that I have is I have ultimate confidence in my capabilities.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people are really attracted to that. They're like, okay, like why is Sarah so confident that she can do this? Yet I make more money than her and I'm maybe older than her or have all these other cards in my hand that she doesn't have, but yet I'm lacking confidence. So I think a lot of people are attracted to following me or understanding how I've done what I've done because I'm incredibly confident in my capabilities. And then the second is my life is really fun. I lived in New Zealand when COVID hit. I've done van life. I've traveled to 40, gosh, I think 47 countries on 6 continents.
Wow.
And I'm having a lot of fun. And I am not, I'm not bartending or backpacking or I'm buying really smart, incredible cash flowing deals. Last deal I bought was 93% cash on cash. And so I buy really good deals and I have a lot of fun.
Right.
And I think what people tend to do is they think, oh, I can't have fun yet, or oh, I don't have enough money to have fun yet.
Mm.
And what I'd love to do is really just kind of give everyone a permission slip. Like you can go on that vacation. And then if you still don't believe me, what if it's a tax write-off and now it's a business trip? Does that make you more comfortable coming on an African safari with other real estate investors?
Right. No, that's really cool. So you set up and organized some really cool events. You just mentioned African Safari. I think before we even started recording this, you were talking about doing something in Patagonia. You guys were doing a big hike or something like that in Patagonia. How do you come up with these ideas? And then how do you pull this? Like, what's a typical group size for you?
A typical group is 13 to 15 investors. So I like to
Wow.
keep them pretty small.
Wow.
It allows you to build really deep relationships with these investors. So much so that here's an example. I had an event in January 2022. There were 17 investors and 9 of them went under contract within 6 weeks of the event. And 7 of the 9 said they wouldn't have done that had it not been for the event.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, myself included. I actually was like, oh, I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to buy anything this quarter. Well, then you're in a group text and you get FOMO. You're like, okay, I guess I want to buy something because everybody else is buying something. Then a year later, just this last week, they actually had a reunion. So 10 of the 17 got together to have a reunion trip. And some of them have added 9 units to their portfolio. Another added 11 this year. 2 of them are partnering together, doing a pretty extensive BRRRR project. And then another person in the group is actually their private lender lending them money.
Wow, that's really cool and super powerful. What would you recommend to somebody, or what did you do? Maybe is another way to ask this question to develop that following. I mean, it's one thing to buy real estate; it's another thing to build your portfolio, live around the world, but it's a whole nother animal entirely to go out and say, "Hey, I'm going to set it up and do some really cool, epic trips. Come join me."
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about being an entrepreneur is that you think you have to have the perfect website, the perfect logo, the company name. You guys, I had no logo, no name, no website, no nothing. I only needed to fill 11 seats. And so I had confidence. I was like, I know way more than 11 people. I know, let's call it, I know 200 people. Do you think I can get 11 of the 200 to say yes? And I was 100% confident that that was going to happen. And then if it hadn't worked out, that's when you reach out to other people and you start talking about affiliate links or, giving referrals. But that first event was so easy to fill because I had a really great idea. I said, "Hey, are you lonely? Are you craving community and connection and want to start out the year right and do some goal setting and just have some freaking fun?" And I think believe I asked 14 people and 12 said yes. And the only two that said no was because they were pregnant.
It's a good reason. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you recommend, or what have you guys done that you've found to be really successful at an event like this?
Vulnerability. I mean, I
Hmm.
know that being able to show your cards and say, "Hey, I know everyone keeps talking about delayed financing, but what is that again?" Because then you realize like half the group sitting next to you has no idea what it is either.
Right.
Or hey, how did you go from 3 units to 15 units? How'd you finance those? Like asking those really good questions and then showing vulnerability. Things like, hey, I have $100,000 in my bank account and I am scared. I feel like I should keep most of that for reserves, or I really want to take down another deal, but not sure if I have enough money. Just all of those details that I think a lot of people keep hidden. They feel vague is a lot more attractive than vulnerability, but it's not true. I mean, the fact that those 10 people had a reunion, it's
Mhm.
because they've been wildly vulnerable the last 12 months and they've built really cool friendships.
That's really cool. What do you, I mean, do people come to this event to learn from you or just the experience of the event itself? How do you structure that?
Yeah, great question. I really show that we're not going to have presenters or presentations. There's enough podcasts, conferences, all books. I mean, heck, I wrote a book, read my book. We're not going to sit in a classroom. That's not what the events are about. So I have different types of events. One is a goal setting retreat. So that's about half classroom, half adventure. I have an event where it's all adventure. There's absolutely no classroom. What's really fun about that one is there's a 2 hour bus ride in between Antigua, Guatemala, and the lake where we go ziplining. We have a cocktail class, a private chef at our rooftop pool. It's a super neat event. And in that 2 hour bus ride, we talked about Instagram branding. We talked about raising private capital. So even though I didn't create a time and the agenda to now we're going to talk about private lending, it happens so naturally because we're so excited to be hanging out with 11 other investors.
Right. Right. No, and to your point, that's something even going to conferences now. Um, like I spend the entire time in the hallway. Like I don't go to a conference
Exactly.
for the panel. I mean, I think about 2 conferences last year I went to. That's about the limit for me every year is 2 conferences. And it's like you just spend the entire time in the hallway talking to people. Like, okay,
And,
thank you for the people
and
on the stage, but I'm gonna go talk to people in the hallway.
And Sam, so let's take that money that you spent to fly there, to buy expensive hotel food, to stay in the expensive hotel that you didn't even hang out in your room at. Let's take that same money and let's take the hallway conversations and put them at a winery in Italy or on a hiking trail in Chile. There's no reason to go to conferences if you're just going to hang out in the hallway. If I can create that same experience with the same caliber of people but in an epic location. And then you're getting a really sick vacation. as
Right.
well as the same, incredible conversation around investing and mindset and goal setting and building great business relationships.
Absolutely. That's cool. I love it, Sarah. I love what you've done thus far. You've taught us a lot about medium-term rentals, how to invest out of state, how to crush it even when you've busted your arm. I mean, that sounds awful. I mean, I can't believe you carried through with the event. That's incredible, by the way. I don't know what
I didn't tell any of the attendees. I didn't post on Instagram. And so you should have seen their faces when they walked in the door. They were like, "What happened?" I'm like, "We'll talk about it soon." And yeah, I was admittedly in a lot of pain, and my surgeon wanted the swelling to go down.
right.
And so part of me was, well, I could be a sitting duck and probably pretty bummed out, or I can push through the pain and let the swelling go down while I host an epic event.
Right. Yeah, you can have a pleasant distraction instead of, instead of mindlessly binge watching something on Netflix, just hoping you feel better soon. So that's
Exactly.
really, really cool. You talked about medium-term rentals. You talked about your design services that you've set up really nationwide, which is really cool. You've talked a lot about your epic adventures that you guys are doing. Really cool. What would you say is next for you? That's question one. And question two is, what's one mistake you've made that you feel like that you can help our listeners avoid?
Oh, great question. So next for me is really focusing, funny enough, on my health. Even before the broken arm, I planned on, I was training for Patagonia. I'm training for Mount Kilimanjaro in the summer after the African safari. There's 7 investors doing Mount Kilimanjaro. So
Wow.
really focusing on my health. I think there's a lot of investors who are really good at business and really good at investing, and then maybe their romantic life or their personal life or their health gets put on the back burner. And that was definitely me the last couple of years. So focusing on my health is going to be priority number one. Now just looks a little different with a bum arm,
Right. There's that.
and probably just even more important. And then the one mistake, well, that would probably be one of them, is, not focusing on my health. But the thing that I think would help your listeners the most is I should have hired faster.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people have heard about virtual assistants and think that you need to have a very lucrative side hustle before you can hire a virtual assistant. And the reality is, if hiring a virtual assistant to just do a few hours a week, like 4 or 5 hours a week, would improve your life, then spend the money. I hope that everyone hears that, regardless of where they're at in their investing. There is a lot of things that you do that should be off your plate, and you can hire someone else to do those.
That is no, truer words have not been spoken. So that's absolutely right. Thank you for taking the time to share that. That is a powerful strategy, and it's something that, yeah, if I'm ruthlessly committed to in my own life, where it's like, okay, I'm keeping lists of everything I'm doing. And when it's like, okay, could I assign this to someone else? And once you get that off your plate, my gosh, it's freeing. So
It's
that's
free.
absolutely very cool. Sarah, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
The best way to get a hold of me is my website, Sarah D. Weaver, and my Instagram handle is also Sarah D. Weaver. If I said anything on the show, you guys have any questions, I really do like hearing from you. So please reach out.
Awesome. Thank you again, Sarah. Certainly appreciate it.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.